Alright folks, hello and welcome back to online English class. I hope you guys are doing well today. Today we're going to finish up our work on OTN 8, which analyzes the falling action of Heart of Darkness, looking specifically at pages 135 through 143. I've altered the prompt for our analysis today slightly, which you may have not even noticed if I didn't mention it, but I changed it on RenWeb as well, so if you have an outline of your notes, you might want to change this prompt. We're going to be looking at Kurtz's final understanding of himself prior to his death, all right, in his moment of anagnorisis, a moment in which a character in literature comes to a recognition of the full weight, the full meaning of the choices that he has made and the life that he has led, okay? And then we're going to look at Marlowe's response to this moment, okay, to characterize Marlowe, okay? So this is not just about Kurtz, but it's also about what Kurtz's death and his moment of anagnorisis means to Marlowe as a pilgrim, okay? So, before we do that, let's quickly run back through our top of the week announcements. First and foremost, okay, we want to remember that you need to continue your discussion grade procedure on a daily basis. All right. Second, make sure that you email me confirmation of your completion of OTNs 5, 6, and 7 by Friday at 3 p.m. That's today at 3 p.m. All right. Beyond that, continue your work on your OTNs as we complete them in class. We only have OTN 8 and 9 left. We're going to complete OTN 8 today. We're going to begin OTN 9 on Monday, finish it on Tuesday, and then begin the process of preparing for your Unit 6 test on Wednesday, and then take that test on Thursday and Friday. And then the final week of school we will be spending working on your Quarter 4 essay. So we will be working on your Quarter 4 essay from May 18th to May 22nd. The last day that you can submit that essay to me is May 22nd without incurring a late penalty. Okay, so without any further ado, right, as things are wrapping up here, exactly according to plan, let's go ahead and return to OTN 8, all right, and analyze this important section of Conrad's novel. Okay, so we've already completed our SQ3R for this portion of text, and in doing so, we looked backwards and summarized Marlowe's experiences, the speaker of this text, the protagonist of this journey, his experiences up to this point. Okay, and basically they can be summarized as follows. Right, Marlowe leaves Europe looking for a kind of morally coherent, authentic life. He wants to meditate on and to discover a kind of purpose that he can live his life unto, a kind of telos, a kind of ultimate purpose that offers a rationale for his life, that makes his work make sense. Okay, increasingly, while he is in the Congo, he begins to recognize that his society and the representatives of his society in the Congo live morally incoherent lives. That is expressed in the characters that are associated with the Belgian Congo Company. Consider the manager, the accountant, the brickmaker. All of these individuals, right, that live morally incoherent lives according to Marlowe. Increasingly, Marlowe looks to Kurtz as a man who lives according to moral principles, who does what is right simply because it is right. All right, he looks to Kurtz as the kind of man who lives the kind of life that Marlowe wants to live, that Marlowe's sort of inherent human desire to transcend his own temporality, to transcend his own wills to power and pleasure, to get beyond that and to live a life in pursuit of a high good, noble aims. All right, that's a sort of distinctly human desire that Marlowe looks to Kurtz as as a person who he can emulate. Right. Now, as he gets further into the Congo, he begins to recognize that Kurtz is certainly not that man, but rather a man who has embraced a purely bestial life, all right, as he satisfies his various cravings or lust for power and pleasure. A man who has rejected the notion that he has an immortal soul and that he is capable of transcendence, and that he indeed is responsible for meditating on transcendent truths and eternal concepts like right and wrong, good and bad, good and evil. Okay, Kurtz rather seems to, while in the Congo, drop all those moral pretenses and simply live a bestial, carnal life. Okay, but in the final scene, all right, in the climax that we studied earlier, prior to OTN 8 and in the end of OTN 7, we began to recognize, all right, Marlowe begins to recognize or sees very clearly, like a flash of lightning, that Kurtz is not either one of those men, but rather both of those men simultaneously. He's a man who, like Marlowe, longs after a morally coherent life in line with transcendent truths and eternal truths. A man who is by impulse, all right, compelled to consider how he will be remembered through time, and to desire to be remembered as a good man, to live on, to endure, all right, and to embrace the kind of immortality that the human being has been designed, or perhaps has inherited or cursed, if you ask Conrad, with the ability to desire. Right? He is both that man and also the carnal, bestial man crawling on all fours back into the Congo in order to satisfy his lust. He is both of those men simultaneously. Okay? So the question becomes, how will Kurtz and Marlowe respond to what has been revealed to them in that climactic scene? Well, the first thing that we should note is that Marlowe doesn't lose his reverence or respect for Kurtz. As they are heading out of the Congo, in fact, Marlowe stays by the bedside of Kurtz for extended periods of time and listens to Kurtz talk. He doesn't leave him behind. All right. Later in a conversation, he refers to Kurtz, or he agrees with the fact that Kurtz is a universal genius. Now, this is easy. It's easy to misunderstand Marlowe's respect and reverence for Kurtz as a sort of approval of what Kurtz did in the Congo. That is not what Marlowe is communicating here, but rather what Marlowe is doing in communicating the fact that Kurtz is a kind of universal genius is the fact that Kurtz, according to Marlowe, and what Marlowe has learned in his pilgrimage, is that he views Kurtz as a profound representation of the human condition. Okay, so when we talk about geniuses, we refer to a person who is like profoundly good at something, all right, or profoundly has a profound understanding of something. Like a genius in math has a profoundly deep and rich understanding of mathematics, right? They're not just smart at it like a normal person is. They're like Newton was. Okay, they understand its nature and are even able to perhaps expand our understanding of its nature. And in that same way, Kurtz becomes this universal genius as he profoundly understands and expresses the nature, the essence of the human condition. Okay, so unlike Marlowe's rejection and disgust for the manager and the brickmaker and all of the other quote-unquote European pilgrims in the Congo, Kurtz is not a shallow man. He is a deep and wholehearted man. But, all right, as noted in the following action, it becomes increasingly clear that Kurtz is incapable of being wholeheartedly one thing or the other. He is wholeheartedly both simultaneously. And in that way, he's kind of insane. Okay, his language begins to put together in the same paragraph notions like, all right, Marlowe, you should do everything according to right motives. Okay, you got to make sure, you must take care of the motives. All right, watch your motives. Make sure that your actions align with good purposes. Now, what that is to say, all right, and what that reveals is Kurtz's recovery of his moral pretensions, of his desire to live a good life, his desire to be remembered as a good man, to align his actions with ultimate purposes. Okay, again, that is a distinctly human, non-bestial kind of thing to meditate on. It presupposes that there is such a thing as good and such a thing as right, concepts that only human beings can discover, okay, and that only human beings think about. No bear, no dog, no cow thinks about right motives. They don't have uneasy consciences, right, in which they consider concepts like, am I doing what I ought to be doing? They just follow instinctual impulses and they don't call it right or wrong, right? They call it life. They call it survival. right? So here, in one breath, Kurtz is affirming his kind of moral pretensions and his distinctly human desire to be good, and also, right, in the next breath, saying, "Oh, but I will wring your heart yet." All right, expressing this irrepressible will to power, this will to dominate things by whatever means necessary in an amoral pursuit of survival. In other words, Kurtz is both of these things simultaneously. An expression of, a profound and honest expression of, not a shallow suppression of, but a profound expression of these two competing portions of the human spirit that exist simultaneously. Okay? Now, what Kurtz and Marlowe need to be fixed, what Kurtz was looking for and Marlowe was looking for in the very first in the very beginning of all their pursuits, is the same thing that human beings as pilgrims are always looking for: a kind of ultimate purpose, a telos, a reason to do what they do and live how they live and work how they work. Okay, it's one of the reasons why students are so frustrated by some of their schoolwork, because they ask questions like, what's the point of this? How is this going to help me? Right? That assumes that the telos of your education is you and your own comfort, your own well-being, your own riches, the fact that you can get a career. Okay? But that indeed, at least here at Redeemer Christian School, is not the telos of your education. Right? The telos of your education is the worship of God and the knowledge of the truth that is revealed in His world. You see, when that becomes the ends of your education, reading books that don't make you money but reveal elements of the human heart become absolutely reasonable endeavors. And so does learning calculus. Even if you never ever use calculus in your day job, even if it never makes you $1, and even if you suffer while you're doing it, it is still good to do and a reasonable undertaking because it is connected to a larger ultimate purpose. What Kurtz and Marlowe need is that same kind of ultimate purpose. They are humans, and therefore they need to align their actions with right motives. But the curse that Marlowe has found, the curse that Kurtz embodies, all right, is that revelation, which for the Christian is embodied by Christ and the Word of God, the only hope to save us from the nihilistic, meaningless world that Marlowe and Kurtz inhabit. Apart from that revelation, because Marlowe already presupposes that there is no God, there is no revelation of truth, but rather that truth must be constructed by the man, right? In affirming that, in distancing himself from that God, he also has to admit that mankind is the product of a world that has no ultimate purpose and has no designer who could give it an ultimate purpose, who could order it. There is no order. Rather, there is unending chains of chemical reactions and particles smashing into each other that ultimately resolve in annihilation and death. Okay? So the man, all right, Kurtz, simultaneously cannot accept the fact that he lives a merely brutal existence, all right, because he senses that he is more than an animal. He believes that he is more than a brute, but cannot discover the source of that impression, an ultimate purpose that makes him more than brute. So he is cursed to live a life of unending disappointment. All right, Kurtz recognizes this fully for himself. Where? On his deathbed. All right, right before he dies. Okay, and he comes to this tragic recognition. He states the dual horror the dual tragedy of human life, okay, which is why he says the horror, the horror. Okay, he characterizes life and human existence very darkly as a kind of choice between two different nightmares, two different intolerable existences. On the one hand, the first horror is the horror of embracing a brutal life, which no man fully can do or wants to do because of the sense that we are more than animals. Okay, but all right, it is indeed, given the premises of an atheistic, materialist, carnal life, okay, or a carnal world, that brutal life is the only truth that there is to live by. Okay, there is no ultimate purpose to the man's life in this world, and that is a kind of horrifying reality that ultimately renders one's life meaningless, one's existence completely incoherent and absurd. That's pretty horrible. But the alternative is equally horrible. Ready? The second alternative is rejecting this bestial life and living a life of moral pretension, of pretending like there is some ultimate purpose, some ultimate truth, some ultimate goodness that you can pursue. All right? But that is ultimately not true, and that is ultimately just pretend. All right? Your whole existence is playing pretend and then dying. Okay? It isn't based on any ultimate reality. So there is a dual horror to the human existence that Kurtz embodies in his life and also in his death. Okay, and the profoundness of Kurtz's understanding of that horror is precisely what makes Marlowe continue to call him things like a universal genius. Okay, it doesn't mean that he's a good man or a nice man. It means that he has a genius understanding of the deep darkness, of the deep horror that is at the heart of human existence, apart from a revelation that penetrates that darkness and gives man a purpose, that illuminates the universe and promises to redeem it, that offers a law to live by, that offers evil to reject and fight against. Without that revelation, man is left in the darkness to live a dual horror life, either to embrace a completely bestial existence that is amoral and completely morally incoherent because of the inexistence of morality in the first place, or to live a life of pretending, to live a lie. The horror, Kurtz summarizes. That's all we have for today. Hope you have an excellent day.